Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Candice Stutzriem. Candice is an El Paso County GOP Canvas board member and is leading the fight against Initiative 310, the ranked choice voting and open primary ballot measure. Well, Candice, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Brandon.
Well, Candice, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you, and how did you get involved in politics?
Well, I'm actually kind of new to this, but just like so many people in Colorado and across the country, I couldn't sleep after the 2020 election, and it literally changed my life. That night, I was on the internet, like so many people, trying to find an alternate opinion to what was becoming true, that there was still an election right out from underneath us, and I came across General Thomas McInerney talking about how the packet captures were being sent over to Europe and to Spain and to the Middle East, and all of our election results were being tampered with. The reason that resonated with me is that Thomas McInerney was my first wing commander. So this was like having my father telling me, you need to take this seriously. So I leaned in. It was a very personal thing to me. And I just immersed myself in all the happenings in El Paso County in particular. When 22 came around, we had so many contested races there. And I'm honored to be the canvas board member from El Paso County. And I stood up an election integrity task force there. We have over 200 people in 8 different committees, each of us looking at different aspects of election integrity. And from that, I saw this looming threat of the approaching of ranked choice voting into Colorado almost a year ago, and then became increasingly involved as they were taking shape in the form of initiatives. So the story begins to unfold right there.
Well, Candice, I really appreciate your passion and your commitment. Appreciate you jumping in and getting in the fight. I think those years, 2020 to 2022, really have really ignited a lot of people and gotten them more involved than they would be. And it's really exciting and actually makes me really
It
optimistic to
is.
see how many people are getting involved at the local
Mm-hmm.
political level, and we can have
Mm-hmm.
an impact. We can really do something about it.
Absolutely.
But it really takes people like yourself and people watching to get involved and start showing up.
Mm-hmm. I believe we can make a difference, and we can't stop fighting. Fight, 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 right?
Definitely, definitely can't stop fighting and just keep going. So let's jump into the initiative here. Now, of course, we're calling it Initiative 310. We're filming this right before the title board, the Secretary of State's going to set that ballot number. So people watching, you might hear us call it 310, but you're going to see on the screen the actual ballot measure number or name that it's going to have come November. So just want to explain that to people a little bit here, but I'm going to go ahead and start sharing a screen. We have a couple little slideshows here that are going to give people some more information. We want to break this down and make it as simple and as easy to understand as possible because it is a complicated issue. So Candice, I put together some slides here. We also have a slide presentation that you sent me. I just really wanted to cover the basics to start with, give people kind of that background of what we're going to be talking about. So Initiative 310 should be renamed by the time you see this video, but really two key features of this, and that's the all candidate open primaries and ranked choice voting. So what does that mean? Well, for people out there, all candidate primary is kind of what it sounds like. In Colorado, if you've been participating just recently, especially recently in the last couple of years, we have an open primary system currently where it doesn't matter what party you're associated with necessarily. I'll rephrase that a little bit, but unaffiliateds can participate in both Democratic and Republican Party primaries, to be more clear on that. So that's been a recent change. This would kind of really change that, put it on steroids, I think, as you were telling me here. So it would mean that, kind of the same way we see it now, people who've been in the political party realm, you nominate your party, your candidate through either the assembly process or through petition. That's how people get on the primary. So that's about the same. What does change is that pretty much all nominees are going to go on the primary ballot for every party. So not just the two big parties, the Democrats and Republicans, but this is people who are petitioning onto the ballot who are not associated with any party. So your unaffiliated candidates, as well as your Libertarian Party, Green Party, all these other political parties that are out there here in Colorado, they'll all be on one primary ballot. So every candidate will be on that primary ballot. And then voters just pick one of those
That's
candidates.
right.
So, Candice, how many people could be on the primary ballot?
Well, the best example of this is what we saw in Sarah Palin's race in Alaska. They have one congressional seat representing the entire state of Alaska. And on that candidate, on that race in 2022, 48 candidates were on the same ballot for just that one race.
Wow. So you hear that, people, you could have 48 candidates, you could have 100 candidates. If they qualify through the petition process or through the political assembly process, they'll all be on the same one party ballot or one non-party ballot, I guess, or an open ballot. I know it's try not to confuse my words here. But then what's interesting is those top four. So the top four candidates from the primary, regardless of political party, will go to that general election ballot. And this does only apply to that state level and national offices. So voters would have the opportunity, doesn't matter what political party you're in, you get a big long primary ballot, pick your top one, you only get one vote, and then those top four
One vote.
candidates for that seat. So that's governor, congressional, senator, state legislature, state board of
Mhm,
education, any of those kind of state level and above seats would end up going on that general election ballot of those top four that are picked there.
mhm, mhm.
Am I leaving anything out major on this one? And I know we'll get into
No,
more
you
detail here in
covered,
a minute.
yeah, you mentioned a lot of important things. The voting on the primary ballot is different than the general. It's two different methods of voting. Even though there are as many as 48 candidates for the single race, you only have one vote in the primary race. It is a simple, uh, whoever gets the most, the top four vote getters proceed on to the general election. And it could very likely be all one party, and you can guess what party that might be. Um, Everything else is said, it's true. Everybody will, I believe that the parties will still be able to nominate their candidates onto the primary through the assembly method. But pretty much it's going to be a petition access onto this ballot.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting. And from what I understand, it would start in 2026 if this ends up passing this year. Is that what you've heard?
Well, that's right, because this may be straying off the subject at this point, but there was an amendment put forth at the end of the legislature last year called Senate Bill 24-210, which initiated pretty much a slow rollout of this ranked choice voting. In other words, they're already on board. They're assuming this is going to pass. And I'm here because I believe we can still stop this thing. But they are already writing into statute a trial of the ranked choice voting procedure to be done in the 25 coordinated election next November. And they've selected 12 municipalities to give this a trial. So based on the outcome of that, they'll be ready to roll it out in full.
Interesting. Okay. So one portion of this initiative is the all candidate open primaries. The second piece is that ranked choice voting in the general election. So they changed it up in the general. That's part of the
Mhm,
same initiative here. Does two changes to our elections here in Colorado if passes. The ranked choice voting means that there'll be up to four candidates, right? Because we saw in the primary piece, you have the top four go through. So you have four candidates for governor, for example,
mhm.
and you pick your top. You get to vote for all of them. You just rank them based on your preference. So you give them a
That's
rating
right.
of one through four, and
Mhm,
then they go through a voting tally, basically a round of eliminations. And each round, the one with the lowest amount gets taken off the ballot until there's two left. And at that point, when there's only two left, whoever has the most votes at that point gets to win that race. So during each round, they eliminate that lowest person, and their second ranks go towards that other candidate that's still in the race if they're in the race still.
Brandon, the key word here is majority. And this is the difference between the way we've conducted elections in America and in Colorado for the last, specifically Colorado for 148 years. Our system has been built on what we can call a plurality. Whoever has the most votes wins. But the spirit behind ranked choice voting is a majority, at trying to cobble together, manufacture a false majority by reassigning the next choice votes to the remaining candidates after the lowest vote getters are eliminated, aiming at pushing one of those candidates over the 50% mark. So also a different philosophy. It's a populist point of view, rather than it actually represents two different philosophies of government. The majority rules, even though it is a contrived, manufactured majority, is the objective of the ranked choice method.
Very interesting. And, I've worked on elections before, so my head's spinning thinking of different ideas in which,
Mm-hmm.
the parties or the consultants or different interested parties could try and play in these races and
Mm-hmm.
manipulate the results based on the
Oh,
candidates they
yes.
put forward. You could put somebody forward who could then drop out. You could have
Mm-hmm.
multiple people and then they drop out. Or, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's so many different techniques
Mm-hmm.
and schemes that could be concocted with this.
Yes, definitely.
Wanted to show people kind of just a very simple graphic. I just did a quick online image search for this. So say round one, you have three candidates in this race. Under this, candidate B has the fewest first place votes, so they get eliminated, goes to round two, and candidate B's votes move to their second and third choice candidates. In this case, that puts candidate A at the top, be getting more of those votes at the end. So, kind of a way for people to very basically see how this system works. You pick who you like, you rank them, and then those votes get redistributed if your candidate is not that top vote getter.
Can I point something else out here? Your
Definitely.
illustration here shows that the candidate B that was dropped out because they had the lowest votes on the first round, you have to realize that that person is probably at the opposite end of the spectrum from the popular, the forerunner, the 40% here. The 40% and the 25% are on opposite ends of their political philosophies. So this is a little bit misleading here, because so often the votes of the person who is eliminated, their next choices who are given to the remaining candidates usually favor the next lowest place. In other words, there's a spectrum of ideas you're looking at on the ballot. The forerunner and the loser are on opposite ends. And by cobbling together the remaining the ballots at the lowest end, then they're able to overcome the front runner. And that's what happened in Alaska. Sarah Palin was ahead by 45,000 coming out of the primary. The fourth place candidate had around 11,000, and there were a couple others in between them. And as they eliminated and reassigned these votes, the votes ended up causing the fourth place candidate to prevail over the front runner. So even though Patola only had 11,000, by adding on the next choice selections of the other candidates, she was able to prevail over Sarah Palin, who started out with 45,000. It's an incredible example. These
Definitely the
numbers are
most
different. I'm pretty much working off of the primary. Yeah, these are better. The numbers you have are better. You can see how it was cobbled. I consider it a false majority. It is not the people speaking.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely the most, probably the biggest, most famous example of this ranked choice voting.
Mhm.
I know they've had some issues up in Alaska. So this is really the last two rounds. I know it says round one or two. This is from Ballotpedia, but it's kind of
Mhm.
we'll see more later of earlier in the rounds when it first started. But for example, you have the results of everybody's first choice candidates there in the blue. So,
Mhm.
Mary Patola had 40% of those first choice, Sarah Palin 31%, and Nick at 28%. And then since he had the fewest votes, he was eliminated. So
Mhm.
his votes got transferred to the next choice of the people who voted for him. and most of those went more so went kind of to that Mary
Hmm.
Patola,
Hmm.
and she ended up winning with that 51% of the vote. So and went to Congress over Sarah Palin, which surprised a lot of people I know back then.
Shock the nation is the way I would describe it. Absolutely shock the nation. And even now, here we're using it as an example to show you the horror of ranked choice voting and how it ends up belying the simple will of the majority or of the plurality of the voters. But Democrats hold this very example up as a success for them. They are showing how their person prevailed under this method. And there are stories of how Mary Peltola in the primary would walk around with Sarah Palin's poster in one hand, and then the other. Nick Begich isn't the Republican, was he? There were two Republicans, and she would say, vote for either one of these guys first place, but make me your next choice. So she was smart enough to realize she could game the system that way, and look how it worked. It was beautiful because it's also a kind of an inside jab at the GOP that they should have decided which one of them was going to run, but they ended up somewhat splitting the vote among them. And Mary Peltola filled that gap. So yeah, it's definitely gameable as well. And it certainly worked here. Mary became, I think there was another Democrat years ago that didn't quite fulfill their term. So she became the first Democrat to serve a full term from the state of Alaska in the history of Alaska.
Oh wow. Yeah, very interesting. And you have another slide on your presentation here that's going to kind of add some more depth to this. And I'm really excited to see that one. But Candice, that's what I had just to kind of give people that general
Mhm.
idea of what we're talking about today, the ranked choice voting in the general election and the all candidate open primaries. So that both of these things are tied to this one initiative. If one of them bothers you, then you should probably vote no on the entire initiative. That's how it's tied together. Really interesting change. But let's go ahead and jump over to your slideshow. And if you want to walk us through some of these slides here and kind of explain for the viewers there what we got going. So can you see that there?
Yes, thank you
Perfect.
for this opportunity. You touched on something very important. These ballot initiatives are supposed to be single subject initiatives, but there is so much wrapped up in this 310. In my mind, it effectively rewrites all of Title I, which is the Colorado Revised Statutes chapter on elections. It reorganizes elections we have never seen anything like this in the history of Colorado or even in the history of America being done on the scale that we're talking in combination with this open all candidate. We call it jungle primary. There's so much wrapped up into this 310, and we deserve that. We believe the Colorado voters have a right to know what is in this bill. That's why we are so anxious to get this word out. You can just go ahead and proceed. This is basically to say that this is happening all across the country. Don't think for a minute it's a bipartisan effort. It is solidly Democrat backed, solidly by the left, because that convoluted method of voting that we just described ends up favoring the loser, and the winner ends up losing. And I'm a believer that most of our country, you've seen the maps of where all the counties in America are shown, and the entire country basically is solid red. But nevertheless, this method teases out the lower vote getters, cobbles together all the losing votes to where they prevail over the front runner. It is an injustice to the voter, to the elector. It takes away our right to choose our own leadership. So anyway, this map is old. This was just as early as January. Now there are 10 states that have banned it. And you see Maine here and Alaska. It is on the ballot to eliminate ranked choice voting in those states, whereas in Colorado, we're trying to bring it on. Next. You need to know the money behind it. This is the big guy at the very top. You see these activist groups here. Fair Vote, you recognize the Open Society and the Tides Foundation. That's George Soros's pet projects. And then more importantly, Unite America underneath that. Of all things, Kent Thiry is now the co-chair of Unite America, and you'll see Unite Colorado here locally. Kent Thiry, of course, is the billionaire who's behind Initiative 310. He hired the law firm that wrote over, 70 different, it was 87 actually, different initiatives that went through the title board, and they selected 310 as their crown jewel. He paid over $250,000 to this law firm, this prestigious law firm, in order to make this happen. He's doing it not only here, but in Nevada at the same time. But it's sweeping the country. And look who this stellar private donor is. You all know this name, Sam Brinkman-Fried. He's doing prison time for stealing all that cryptocurrency. That is the energy. That is the fuel behind this. So this is, you need to know this. This is the energy and the momentum behind 310 and behind ranked choice voting. You need to think this through.
Oh,
Next.
perfect. Yeah, no, really excited to expose some of the financials here. I'm going to be planning to do a video kind of detailing some of the numbers behind it, where the money's come from, and this and that. So I really appreciate you getting this information out there,
Oh, I
because I
can't wait
think
to see that.
when you see
Great.
where the money's coming from and who's funding it, it really gives you that bigger picture of what's going on.
Hmm.
People have great talking points. They hire great media and marketing companies to really say what they're trying to do. But the reality is, when you see who's actually paying for it, that kind of gives you the rest of the
Yes,
picture. So,
the man
uh,
behind the curtain. Yep. Next. Okay, this is similar to what you were describing, but this this imagines that there are four candidates. It's a little, we won't really get into the details of this, but basically you need to rank these four candidates in the order that you would like them to finish. And then, but what this illustrates that some people's votes can count as many as 3 times. Others are eliminated after the first round. And then we didn't even touch on this, but many ballots are called well, with the term we use is the ballots are trash, because if you fail to follow all the rules, these convoluted rules, two different methods, one in the primary, one in the general, two different ballots, one in the primary, one in the general. And if you fail to follow these rules, and basically you're having to violate what you would do intuitively, you think, I've voted all my life. I don't need somebody to tell me how to do this. If you just follow your intuition when you get in there, your ballot is going to be trashed. They don't try to cure them. They don't try to fix them, give you a call and try to, no, your ballot is just trashed. So many can be trashed, it can actually exceed the margin of the win. So that's a huge factor in whose ballots are trashed. It disenfranchises specific voting groups like English as a second language, elderly people who voted a certain way all their lives, minorities. And that's what we saw in Alaska again. And what ultimately happens is, after repeatedly a couple of years of using this method, the people just get tired of the gamesmanship in the voting process. So what happens? They just quit voting. And I believe that's the objective of it. The objective is to eliminate the parties and to basically choose our own leadership. And this also, where some people's votes can count 3 times, others count one, this violates a concept called one person, one vote, which is part of the Warren Court in the 1960s. It's a concept that was developed out of assigning House seats according to the population. Out of that argument came the idea that for every voter, they are allowed to have one vote. And I believe this should be challenged on the Supreme Court level, because I don't believe it's constitutional, but this is how it works. So next slide. So this is telling you that 310 is coming our way. There were a lot of different options, and ultimately they chose 310. And this writer here is basically saying 310 is going to change the way we have done elections in Colorado for 150 years. Basically, those two concepts, the all candidate primary and then the ranked choice voting in the general. But what you need to know also about the all candidate primary, being a petition only access, it not only eliminates the parties, but by courting candidates who would benefit from a petition method, it 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 appeals to and it only benefits candidates who have enough money to conduct a petition system, a petition on. And I'll tell you that because we just ran a petition system trying to get our own ballots on the initiative for this fall. It's a lot of money. So you either have to have money on your own or you have to be willing to take other people's money. And that's where it gets sticky. The other people's money. The people that are handing out the money for these petition drives, they're not going to pick you if you are Joe the plumber. You know, if you represents the grassroots values and the grassroots, um, well, say you're open, you have radical ideas like you want to close the border, or radical ideas like you support our Second Amendment gun rights, or you're pro-life, or you want to keep the government out of our schools and stop the grooming of kids. All these are considered fringe values when it comes to somebody paying for you to petition on to a ballot. They're not going to fund you if they don't think that your opinions are going to make it for the long haul. So basically, that's what they're doing. They're shutting down our values. They're eliminating the platform of the party primary system where people go up in front of an assembly and where thousands of people are present, and they're basically applying for the job in front of thousands of people, and it's the true marketplace of ideas on display right in front of you. And this is what they're trying to eliminate. They don't care who you are. They don't care what you stand for. Do you want to proceed on? I'll show you the all candidate primary. Did we see that? Go to the next slide. Yes, right here. This shows you what this primary ballot looked like for Sarah Palin's race. There are 48 candidates on this one race. So you don't even know who these people are. Look who number 6 is, Santa Claus. Santa Claus ran, of course, as an independent, but you don't know who these people are, let alone what they stand for. So it's all anonymity. So it's just a blind vote. And if anything, you know, you may buy media time, but then AI creates all your creative material. So they're not going to let you say anything that's offensive, like one of our minority opinions. You know, not if you want to get elected. That's how the AI thinks. So all these messages are going to sound the same. All the people are going to look the same, hire the same media companies to do their radio and television spots. Then it's the marketplace of ideas. It's the bully pulpit. It's what elections are for. It's what we stand for. It's all been eliminated into this cynical idea that you're just one of 48 names on a ballot, and we'll call that an election. Next slide.
Candice, just real quick, yeah, to show people
Yes.
this, just to make it clear. So, you know, people can see. So the winner was this Mary Patola, who was we kind of discussed it already, but just to really emphasize that again, who's a Democrat in Alaska. Very surprising. So this was the initial tabulation of this, what this called jungle primary or all candidate primary that we're going to be voting on here in November, where, you know, traditionally, right, if it was a before this open primary and this ranked choice voting, I mean, Sarah Palin would have won, right? I mean, according to this,
Mm-hmm.
she just would have
Yes.
won. She would have been in Congress. She got the most votes. She was
Mm-hmm.
the first choice for the most amount of people, but because other people had um, Mary Patolia as the second or third or fourth, whatever other choice, she ended up getting all those extra choices. So all these other people who supported, you know, Nicholas Begich, Al Gross, and Tara Sweeney all the way down, including Santa Claus, there was more of those second, third, fourth choices for Mary than there was for Palin. Is that right?
Yep, you've got it. Um, The saying we use is, if the winners lose and the losers win. This is the best example of it. That this primary race shows the popular vote and who the popular person was. And when you go into the general, it completely obscures that. By the way, the slides that you showed how the vote looked after the first pass, the second pass, the third pass, we're never going to see any of that, because all of this is conducted, all the voting is a product of a computer algorithm. And you know how computers are, they're black box operations. You cannot even repeat the count. You uh, cannot audit the count. There's no way to reconstruct the race. So basically, it's just a black box operation. So we're basically handing it over. And there are jurisdictions where they have challenged the results of these ranked choice voting races, and it may take days, weeks, even months, and finally the race will end up on this desk of the Secretary of State. And we know how that might go in Colorado. So, but yeah, you can see also that this was, so two Republicans, an independent and a Democrat, ended up proceeding to the general. But this is because there are so few Democrats in Alaska. They've never had a Democrat representative in their history that's lived a full term. So it's very likely that, say, in the state of Colorado, that all four candidates that will proceed to the general might all be one party.
Very interesting. Yeah. We can
And
go
I
ahead and move
will
on here.
note as well, that's probably a good time, Brandon, to mention, what about the minor parties? Under our present system, the minor parties really have had an advantage. The minor parties proceed directly to the general ballot under the present system. They do not have to go through a primary system, because the purpose of the primary is to reduce the number of runners down to a single candidate to proceed on to the general. Well, we're eliminating the primaries, we're eliminating the parties. So this will mean that your minor parties, the Libertarians, the Constitutionalists, the Green Party, whomever, they're all going to be one of those 48 names. You're just going to blend in with the rest of the pack. So it is definitely a disadvantage to the minor parties.
Very interesting. Yeah. And so if say if you had thinking of some of the congressional races this year where maybe we had some disputed congressional races. So for example, Congressional District 8, you had Gabe Evans and Janet Joshi, but then you also would have thrown in the Democrats side, where they had three
Yes.
plus candidates, and then you had a Libertarian, and then any other unaffiliated who were able to
Mm-hmm.
qualify. So then
Mm-hmm.
this June primary, all voters would have gotten that one ballot with everybody's name on it, and those top four would have went. So we probably would have seen in Congressional District 8, for example, maybe we would have seen, you know, two Democrats and two Republicans, something along those lines, or maybe multiple, something there. So interesting to see kind of how that would work out. And
Mm-hmm.
it would mean that that Libertarian candidate, for example, would probably not have been on the November ballot, not kind of disenfranchising that entire political party.
Exactly right. And one other thing, I don't know if we've made clear, it is all candidate, and we in that ballot illustrates it. It's all 48 on one list, but it's not just all candidate, it's all voter. This is not just an open primary. This is open primary on steroids. This is this is both major parties and the independents and the other party, all parties, all minor parties, major parties, anybody registered to vote. You don't even have to be declared. And so it's like having a general election twice, where all voters vote on the same ballot. It used to be, the purpose of the primary until now has been to eliminate, to streamline the process, to go through a selective process to choose the best candidate to move on to the primary, to the general election. But we're we're throwing that idea of this refining process out because you can see it's really a blind choice. You don't know who the candidates are. You don't know what they stand for. That was the beauty of the assemblies. We had the most pure representative form of government right here in Colorado, that we still have the caucus and assembly method, where you choose the delegates from your neighbors. You know the people that you're sending on to the assembly to make the choices for you. And you meet these people in person, and they're standing in front of you, um, mano a mano, going against the other candidates to prove themselves worthy of your vote. All of that is going to be gone. I call it the marketplace of ideas. It's going to be gone. There are no more ideas involved, no more party platform, no more top line candidate. There's no ranking that comes out of the assembly that he's our best pick. If it's written right now that if anybody gets over 30% in the assembly, that they all can go on to the primary ballot, but not anymore. There won't be any ranking. There won't be any preference. And the way I explain that is that not many people are political geeks like we are, Brandon. A lot of people come to us and they ask us, okay, I don't have time to do what you do, but I value your judgment. Can you tell me who I should vote for? Either they are asking their friends, but really what they're doing is they're surfing off the results of the primary race. They want to know who the party put forward. I may not be able to be involved in the politics, but I am a Republican, and I'm going to vote for whoever you've chosen. That is gone. That will be gone. Um, that's simply how it works. And most people are very happy with that because of the concept of the platform. They know that we align behind a common set of values. This is eliminating that discussion. No more platform, no more vying for who's best, no more picking the best among us. It's just a even playing field, with very little identity, very little information on who these people are, and they have to pay to get on. So it's greatly diminishing what used to be the purest form of representative republic ele electoral process right here in Colorado.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, well, from what I've seen, so there would still be that initial of D or R or L next to the candidate's name during that whole process there, and candidates would still have the opportunity to go through an assembly to get on the ballot, right? Um, also petition, but also get on
For
assembly.
now, yeah. Hmm.
Right. We saw from one of the initiatives that didn't make it through from Kent Thiry that that was one of the other plans as well is to.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I mean, it's interesting because it's kind of this movement to really try and limit the political parties
Hmm.
in a very general, kind of broad
Hmm.
view is kind of the
Hmm.
genesis of a lot of what we're seeing here. And
Hmm.
it's interesting because in Colorado, most people are registered unaffiliated. So most people are
Hmm.
probably okay with, for the average voter out there, the majority of voters in Colorado are probably
Hmm.
not necessarily aligned with one political party or one or the other. So, what's
Hmm.
the message to them of why this is a bad initiative?
Well, my feeling about that is that people are unaffiliated for a lot of different reasons. I think that there's a portion of them, say when it comes to the Republican primary, there's a fair number of independents that are actually the most strident Democrats out there. And they have registered themselves as independents solely for the purpose of choosing the weakest candidate on the Republican platform, on the Republican slate. Then there are independents um, that are fed up with the party, and they feel like they'll say things like, the party, I didn't leave the party left me. So they don't want the affiliation with the party anymore, perhaps because it's not conservative enough for them. And then there are those that are saying, oh, well, I'm just going to wait and see. This way, and I believe that they feel almost a sanctimony about this, that I'm going to wait and see which of the parties serves up the best candidate and reserves I'm reserving my option to choose which party I go with. And to those people, I say, we are in such polarized times now. And I look at these people and I think, I kind of know, I can tell that you're kind of a faith, family, freedom kind of person. I believe you care about, um, the marketplace, the civic society and living in a civilized country, law and order. And I'll say, you're going to wait a long time to find a Democrat that thinks the way you do. Why don't you just join the party and help us regain and heal the party? Help make it better with us. You really, your values do comport with the platform, the Republican platform. Just why don't you, let's all just bury our hatchets and try to come on board together and strengthen what we've already got. So that's my message to the unaffiliated. The unaffiliated are going to have to petition onto this ballot just like anybody else. It used to be that they could go directly to the general. I'm pretty sure it's a pretty shocking change in this. The unaffiliateds are going to be treated like everybody else. So you're going to blend in with all those R's and D's and L's. So it's not a great big change for them, except that they're not really going to know anything about the candidates any more than we do. It's obscuring the identity of who our leaders are purporting to be.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, very complicated, nuanced arguments, I think, all around. Yeah,
Mm-hmm,
unaffiliateds, if there was a candidate who wanted to run, not associated with the party, they really have to get through that primary process where there's going to be,
mm-hmm.
you know, maybe one incumbent that's a Democrat, maybe a couple Republicans on there, some different third parties as well, and they got to figure out to differentiate themselves because they're only competing for that one vote on the actual primary election among all the
That's
voters.
right.
So
Mm-hmm.
you're definitely going to be, in a way, potentially limiting the general election, but also expanding kind of that primary. So kind of potentially, if you can afford to get on the ballot. So very interesting um, way to go here. But let's get back to the slideshow here, Candice. Did you want to go over any of this? We kind of covered the ranked choice
Yeah,
voting
we've
a little
covered
bit.
this. This is the how it works with the objective of to create or through doing another term is instant runoff for ranked choice voting. That really illustrates it a little better. They do a runoff of between the four candidates and then they eliminate the lowest vote getter, reassign the next choices to the remaining candidates, run the count again. If nobody has made a majority, which is 50% plus one, then they once again eliminate the lowest vote getter and then reassign the next choices to the remaining two candidates. And in that third round, it's down to two. They will have a majority in that runoff. So that's basically how it works. So like I was saying, some people's votes can count three times, but often yours will count once.
Hmm.
Does that sound fair? It's not fair. So next slide. This is just an example again. You've shown this, what this ballot looks like. Two different ballots. There's about one ballot will be the primary ballot, and then the ranked choice ballot will be in the general. So people have a lot to learn, and that's a big part of this. That people have no idea what is coming their way in this initiative, whatever the number is going to be, and there's a very big education component that they have not put a price tag on. When we meet on Wednesday to talk about the specifics of this initiative, it doesn't even mention the education component. And I believe it's going to be in the millions of dollars to try to explain to people how to conduct this vote. And I've been doing it now pretty much since January. With our petition drive, we talked to tens of thousands of people across the state. Very valuable time having conversations with people all over, trying to tell them, trying to let them know what is coming their way with this initiative. You deserve to know this. And I really appreciate being able to talk about it. But anyway, this is what the ballots are. So the next slide. is the ugly truth of ranked choice voting by itself. Talked already about trashing ballots for not following the rules, those pockets of our population that are disenfranchised by this. It's not a real majority, it's a false majority of contrived, cobbled together votes. Can't be recounted, repeated, or audited. It's all counted by machines. In the end, voters lose confidence and quit voting altogether. That happened in Alaska. I had the lowest voter turnout on record after this Sarah Palin race.
Wow, that's
And
interesting.
you'll see the big quote here. This is my favorite take-home quote. Then in over 85% of all the jurisdictions that have ever tried ranked choice voting, this is in America over 100-year period, from Alaska to Florida, 85% of them have ended up repealing it. And you know very well, it is not going to be easy to repeal this in the state of Colorado. The cards are stacked against us. And I will tell you, because I know the statutes, I'm in the statutes all the time with my election integrity work, it's already riddled. The ranked choice voting is already written into the statutes. They are ready. This is teed up and ready to happen. This is truly our last chance to stop this thing.
Yeah,
They,
very
they
interesting.
yeah, they're going to make it happen. I hope they don't make it happen. I hope our vote will be true and it will be counted and that we can say no. If 55% of the population approves it, it will be law. That's over half. Don't be
I
part of
just
that. Don't go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that over 85% of jurisdictions who've tried it have repealed it. I mean, I think that's absolutely fascinating. This
Mm-hmm.
November, Colorado will be voting, like you said, voting to institute this type of ranked choice voting system. Well, a lot of other states, including Alaska, will be voting to get rid of it. So it'll be very interesting to
Exactly.
kind of see that dichotomy between different
Mhm.
states. But I mean, that's one of the biggest arguments against it is if it worked, if it was something that people were happy with, then it wouldn't be repealed. People would keep it. People would champion it, and we'd see it a lot more widespread probably than it is already. But the fact that so many people are not happy with it once it passes, I mean, that's definitely huge.
Well, they tried it right here in Aspen in 2009, and because Aspen is with it. They're the next greatest thing. It was such a flaming disaster that the very next year, 65, it was voted out by a 65% margin. They gave it one try, and it was such a failure. It was so, you know, learn your lesson from if Aspen can speak for us, we need to follow their lead. So the next slide, I believe, yes, this is kind of the bigger picture of it all, that we've never seen anything like this in the history of the US or Colorado on this scale. It's a continuation really of what we saw in Prop 107, 108, which is also a Kent Thiry initiative when they first opened the primaries and created the presidential primary. That was phase one. Now this is phase two, and I'm sure there's more to come. It ends the party system, the platform, and the nomination process, along with it, the marketplace of ideas. This is effectively a pay-to-play system with the petition on method. And the result of it, like I said, the fringe opinions, the fringe points of view are eliminated, creates kind of a uniparty candidate. There's not going to be anybody on that um, on that ballot that you can relate to. They won't make it onto the ballot, because the people who will pay for them to get those petitions are not going to pay for them if they're pro-life, pro-gun, pro-border, America First voices. But what I like to say is Joe the plumber need not apply. It used to be that your next door neighbor was a bright guy. He was prescient. He had an incredible worldview, could speak well. He's articulate. He speaks for me. No, he's not going to have the money to do it. And besides, he believes in hard work and the American dream. And, those are fringe ideas now. So anyway, I think we've covered the rest of it. Um, disregard the last one. No, go ahead. The next, this is important. This is this amendment I touched on a minute ago. This is Senate Bill 24-210. It was a Democrat, written by a Democrat legislator. Basically, what it does is it pumps the brakes on the implementation of ranked choice voting by giving it a trial run in 12 municipalities. And I think I've told you it'll be done in the November coordinated election of 2025. And based on the success of how that goes, they'll write a report. The Secretary of State will write a report and send it to the legislature, kind of giving it a thumbs up or thumbs down as to how well their trial of ranked choice voting succeeded. So these municipalities are getting their ducks in a row right now, writing their election plan in order to give it a run, give it a trial. And I think it was actually a wise thing for them to do, because I've actually sat on an interview with El Paso County Clerk and Recorder Steve Schleicher, and he is solidly against this. And he's a brave man to stand up and speak against this on behalf of the county clerks, but he is by no means speaking for the County Clerks Association. But I think he's speaking the truth. This is going to be a disaster for the clerks to try to implement this. Without the education campaign in place to tell people how to vote, they're not prepared for these changes. There's nothing intuitive about it. You're not going to go in there and just be able to figure it out. And if you don't figure it out, your vote will be trashed. And believe me, the number of trash votes can often exceed the margin of the win. It will be a factor in itself. So this is a very important part of this story, this trial. So it's going to slow roll this thing out there. We may not actually see it until 26. And that will be after the November trial. And I believe, they're all going to have to get a passing grade. That's how things work. This isn't exactly a free speech state. So may slow it down, but they're determined to make this happen. And we're determined to stop it.
Yeah, I think, one of the biggest arguments against this initiative is just how complicated it is. For people out there, I think, people can get scared off saying, hey, listen, this is going to change things in a way that we don't really understand. The average person doesn't understand the implications of it. I mean, people who are a little bit of the political nerds, like you were saying, like you and I, we can kind of see what it's going to do, but at the same time, there's so many unknowns. There's so many unknowns of what this could mean, how this can be used to kind of scheme and create different backroom deals and this and that. So it's kind of hard to say exactly the outcome. And I think that's one of the best arguments against it, is because people are going to say this is too complicated, it's too risky. It's this is deciding who's going to be our senator, our congressman, our
Right.
governor. I mean, this is a big deal, and we want to mess with this without it being totally understood, the implications. I mean, that is kind of scary for, I think, a lot of people.
It sure is. And um, they are marketing this 310 and et al., whatever it'll be called, under the concept of modernizing our elections. Now, that just kind of rubs against my fur as a conservative. I don't want to modernize something that doesn't need to be modernized. I'm the person that likes the tried and the true, the traditional and the tested. And it basically, they're saying it's going to improve the quality of candidates, and um, it's going to broaden the number of people that choose our candidates in the primary level. None of those things are true. How can really, ranked choice voting is a method of voting. It's a very convoluted, confusing method of voting. How can the method of voting improve the quality of candidates that are on the ballot? That goes back to the jungle primary. In this method of this free-for-all of everybody on the same list, without identity, How can that be improving the quality of our candidates when it's not even going through an elimination process, which is what the assembly and the caucus system does? It eliminates the worst of them. These are people that have taken a close look at these people and and thinned them out for you. We've chosen the best one. We want to go the distance for your sake. You know, you chose us as your representative and we take it seriously. So all of the promises that they're making they're ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. And you have to ask yourself, at what cost? We are giving up the right to choose our own leadership. That's what it comes down to. In the very same way that Secretary Griswold tried to keep our presidential candidate off of the presidential primary, went all the way to the Supreme Court to try to do that, they were trying to choose our leadership. This is what elections are about. We are choosing our own leadership, and this system is intended to complicate and obscure and prevent really people that represent our values from being represented in government.
Very interesting. For people who want to know more information, firstchoicecounts.com is definitely your resource there. Interesting website, lots of more information on there for people. So check that out. Of course, firstchoicecounts.com. Links to everything will be at Free State, Colorado. But Candice, I really appreciate your time. I think we covered a lot of information.
We did.
Any final thoughts or final words for people?
People need to know what is tucked inside this one initiative. Most people are completely flat-footed, unprepared for what is being marketed to you as an improvement in the way that we have conducted elections for the entire history of this state and this country. This is not offering any hope for democracy. This is truly the end of representative government as we have always known it. And I encourage you to get smart on this. I encourage you to don't stop talking about this. You to take it on as your personal crusade to inform your family, your friends, your neighbors. Um, don't go with girls that vote for ranked choice voting. You know, this is a time for it to get absolutely strident about what your opinion is. This We cannot let this happen. And I believe if we come together, we can prevent it. 55% is a tall number, but we can stop it. We still have a chance. We have 2 months to get this message out. And I thank you for coming on board and encourage you to go to this website and support us and help us spread the word far and fast as we can. And I thank you, Brandon, for having me on and hearing us out. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Candice. Appreciate it. If there's any new developments, please keep me updated and I'll get the information out there. But thanks for your
I
time
will.
today.
Thank you, Brandon.